Short answer, they're sails, which have a lamellar look due to them having horizontal battens going across them. Imagine, on the seas of the Far East, amongst the cliff islands rising otherworldly from the warm shallow waters, flimsy ships catch the winds, sailing from Japan in the north to Indonesia in the south. These flimsy ships are the junk-style ships of the Sino-Malay tradition. They are amongst the most easily identifiable ships due to their unique sails, and they are a telltale sign of you having reached the Far East and the lands influenced by the Cynic civilization. The junk in many ways mirror the flimsy otherworldly look of the inland architecture that is seen around the South China Sea. You have reached the lands of silk and spices, the promised land of the age of exploration, the object of desire. The ships here are from a very different tradition, but aerodynamics still dictate that the sail rig being either square or the fore and aft, depending on the need. The materials used are what separates the junk type ships from other ships. Although the junk is associated heavily with China, it is of Austronesian design, hailing from the Southeast Asian island world and later being adopted by the Chinese. This has great implications for the shipbuilding materials and thus how the ship is built, as the shipbuilding materials are important for how you can design a ship. And exactly materials are the reason for the signature look of junk sails. Arab and European sails were normally made of linen canvas and later cotton, which was an obvious choice due to strength and availability. Linen was not as readily available in East Asia, so their sails were made of mats of plant fibers. These plant fiber mats did not have the strength of linen canvas sails. To counteract this structural weakness, bamboo battens were set horizontally in the sail to strengthen it, giving the sail their well-known appearance. The battens do have the effect of stiffening the sail, however, making junk rigging less ideal for fore and aft rigging because the sail is not as malleable, limiting its ability to go into the wind. The junk sail do instead have the upside of requiring a smaller crew to operate it than an equivalent sail, making it less manpower intensive. This is not an irrelevant trade-off. Less crew means less provisions and thus more storage space for goods. The plant fiber and bamboo sail was also cheaper than the linen equivalent, if less sturdy in rougher seas. The hull of the junk was usually made of readily available softwood and the ubiquitous bamboo. This also lent to the more flimsy look of the junk, but also meant that the hull was flexible. A common trait of the junk hull is the lack of a keel, direction being instead maintained by a large rudder or leeboard, again limiting maneuverability in the wind. This again is due to limits in the shipbuilding materials and the traditions of shipbuilding technology. A hull is much easier to build without a keel. Further, a classic trend of junk-style ships is the addition of tall aft castles and generally the addition of structures on the hull. These were very flimsy in structure, being often again built in bamboo. This is logical and reasonable given that bamboo was cheap and available but still sturdy compared to weight. The roofing would then be made of plant fiber mats similar to the sails. This is not to say that special junks were not built with a much more solid structure, but these were not the general type and would be built for special purposes by the governments. The inside of the hull would be very compartmentalized with rooms and bulkheads to add strength to the hull. In general, we see that the junk compared to the Western shipbuilding tradition involve a very different set of pros and trade-offs, making for a different type of ship. It is important to note that junk does not refer to a single ship, but to all ships of this particular East Asian shipbuilding tradition, making it very diverse. It went from the small ships of the South China Sea over the massive imperial ships of Admiral Zheng He during the Ming Dynasty that reached as far as East Africa to the Western-inspired Red Seal ships of 16th century Japan that combined Western and junk designs. The junk was built with the materials and for the purposes of a specific region with a very different set of needs and availabilities than those further to the west, making for a different ship type. Furthermore, due to distance and isolation, the junk ship type evolved separately from ships to the west, making it a brilliant view to a very separate shipbuilding development. Especially, it is a great study of how much can actually be achieved with weaker materials, where design and some trade-offs are made to still be able to make quite able ships that even gain some pros like the reduced need for manpower to handle the sails with battens. As such, the junk is a view into how shipbuilding can also be done, fully separate from Western tradition.